Good morning. I'm Ondřej Ferdus. I'm the director of the Digital Economy and Technology Department at the Confederation of Industry of the Czech Republic. And I would like to welcome all of you to our first online debate entitled Word on Digital Topics. Today, we will be discussing in more detail the upcoming European legislation, the Digital Services Act, also known as the DSA, which aims to uniformly regulate all commercial entities doing business in the online world. The Confederation of Industry has been involved in the DSA negotiations from the very beginning, talking to policymakers, representing our comments, and regularly informing our members about the ongoing negotiations and as well as the possible impacts of the regulation. We perceive the DSA as a useful tool to set fair rules in the online world. DSA is an opportunity to create an updated regulatory framework that takes account of the rapid progress made in the digital economy, while allowing Europe to continue to be at the forefront of digital innovation. I'm very pleased that our invitation was accepted by the Vice President of the European Parliament, Ms. Dita Charanzová, who is very actively involved in the negotiations on this legislation, doing her best to make the DSA balanced and future-proof. Madam Vice President, I would like to thank you very much for accepting our invitation to take part in this discussion, even at this very difficult time when there is a war going on in Europe. And I know you're dealing primarily with the situation in Ukraine right now. And I would like to thank you for your hard work in this regard. I appreciate it very much. We all know how hard it is to concentrate on anything else. So many thanks from our side. If you let me, I'd like to begin with congratulations on being re-elected as a VP, and I'd like to ask you what's your main objective for this next term.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ondřej, but also the Confederation of Industry of the Czech Republic for being so cooperative and very vocal on digital issues, on the Digital Services Act that we are going to discuss today. Well, you asked me about the objective as Vice President of the European Parliament. Well, my objective remains the same. I would like to represent the Czech Republic and defend the interest of the Czech Republic in Brussels, both the consumers but also the businesses. But of course, you said it, we are now in completely different situation than we were a month ago or a few weeks ago. And the war in Ukraine will definitely shape the priorities of all of us. So while we keep working on our agenda, I think the main priority for all of us is now to keep Europe secure and make sure that we can really help the Ukraine in this war and stop the war and the aggression of Russia. So that's where we are today, and I also would like to thank all the solidarity that I see in my country. Yesterday I spoke with the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine, and she explicitly mentioned the Czech Republic as a country that is helping and showing the solidarity.
Thank you. With the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and we see it on a daily basis, awareness of the cybersecurity has risen again. Are there any specific? What specifically are you doing to address the crisis as the VP responsible for cybersecurity?
Mm-hmm. Well, 2 days ago, we had an online discussion with the President of Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky. And it was challenging to make sure that the connection stays stable. Of course, the question of cybersecurity is far more important, and a lot of people have realized the importance of the cybersecurity. We realized it also during the pandemic, where also our institution was faced with cybersecurity attacks. We also know that these cybersecurity attacks come from two countries, usually from Russia and China. And while I welcome the formal decision and promises from different governments to invest more in defense, I think we also need to invest more in cybersecurity. That's what the Parliament is planning to do. We also need to work closely with other institutions. We do it. We work with European Commission, with Council, but also we want to strengthen the cooperation with member states, with NATO, to make sure that we create resilience framework as the Western and transatlantic countries.
Yeah, as I understand, when we spoke to the Deputy Prime Minister for Digitalization of the Czech Republic, and with the upcoming Czech presidency of the Council, cybersecurity should be or will be one of the priority topics for Czech Republic's presidency. The European Commission wants to make Europe fit for the digital age. My question is, what does this mean to you, and what do you think that the EU needs to do to get there?
Mm-hmm. For me, it means that we will finally start doing what we've been talking for many years. One is the digital infrastructure. I always said that internet for me nowadays is a utility, and all citizens must have access to internet. So we must make sure that in every corner of Europe there is a stable digital infrastructure. But at the same time, we need to make sure that people have digital skills, that we educate our citizens when it comes to the digital field. And of course, for me as a politician, it's also the task to make sure that we have a future-proof legal framework. So we create the conditions for businesses to create in Europe, to scale up in Europe. That's very challenging, because when you speak about legislation in the digital field, digital is a fast-moving environment. So if you want to have a good, stable, future-proof legislation, you need to focus on creating really the basis, the pillars, and let the market then figure out the rest. I would also underline the importance of transatlantic cooperation, because also as we see with this war in Ukraine, I am sure we will get back to further discussion how to strengthen our transatlantic relations, and digital is one of the key fields where we need to see further progress with the US.
I totally agree. Thank you. And by the way, on the digital skills, I think together with the cybersecurity, these were two very underestimated areas of the digital or the digitalization or the digital transformation of the society. Let's move to the DSA. As a shadow rapporteur for the DSA, what do you think the main objective of the legislation should be? Why do you think the European Commission has chosen to regulate entities in the online environment in this way? And do you think it was a right decision?
Yes, it was the right decision, because the current legislation was created 20 years ago, and a lot has changed over the last 20 years as regards the digital world. So we have realized that there are certain shortcomings. We also realized that there are a number of member states that decided to go further and to start regulate different aspects of internet. So I think our objective was really to set up harmonized legal framework for all European companies, or for all companies in the European market. And the main objective is to have this set of rules, how to remove the illegal content, and how to remove it fastly. There was a lot of discussion how far we should go. I always advocated that for me the Digital Services Act is a horizontal piece of legislation which should really set up the basic rules, and then other pieces of legislation will follow. That's the reason why, for instance, we have a special legislation on how to remove terrorist content. That's why we have a special legislation on general product safety, on market surveillance, and other pieces of legislation.
Thank you very much. So these were your main high-level objectives for the legislation. We're now at the stage where both the EU Council and the European Parliament have agreed their positions, and then the trilogues are underway. They are behind closed doors and can often be opaque for citizens. As a participant in those negotiations, can you describe a bit the process in more detail?
Well, it's so-called trilogue negotiations, so where both the Commission, European Parliament, and the Council negotiate the final text. It's an informal negotiation process, which is happening at different levels. At my level as a member of the European Parliament, but as we speak, for instance, today is informal negotiations among at the technical level, as we call it. So these are the advisors, assistants that are trying to smooth the process. From my side, I would just say that for the moment, we all know, you know the position of the European Parliament, you know the position of the Council, and what we are trying to do is to find a compromise, to find a common grounds where we all can agree. That there are a lot of points that we have in common with the Council, but there are also points that we need to further discuss. And here again, I would like to thank for all the inputs that your Confederation provided to all of us, because of course we are politicians. We are trying to make the best legal framework, but I always want to know from those stakeholders that will have to implement it one day, how they see the proposals from the practical point of view.
Yeah, thank you very much also from our side, because we know how you voted on the DSA, and thank you for supporting our arguments that we gave to all of you, to our representatives in the European Parliament. Now, I would like to ask you, what do you think are the main sticking points between the European Parliament and the member states represented in the Council at this point?
A number of them. As you can read both texts, you see really the differences. I think we are now getting closer on many issues, but if I can underline some important questions that are still for the discussion, that's the question of SMEs exemptions. Where my position has always been that we cannot say that one side that all rules should apply to everybody without taking into account the size of the companies, and really use the common sense. Unfortunately, that's not something which is broadly shared. So I wonder what the final result of the negotiations will be in this regard. And also there are topics like targeted ads or data protection rules, where the Parliament went far beyond the position of the Council.
Thank you. From your point of view, what would represent a well-balanced DSA?
Well, if we use the common sense, and also what I argued is that we should avoid being too prescriptive. For me, DSA should be really basic horizontal legislation. If we see the old e-commerce directive, it has a few pages. So I hope we can avoid being too prescriptive. One is to have a rule, or to decide on the rules, like we need to have more transparency if, for instance, the content is removed from the platform, from the site of the platform, so that the user is informed about the fact that the content was removed. Also, a very large online platform will have to do more in terms of the harmful content. So these are the basic rules, but we don't want to say, or I don't want to say to the platforms or the stakeholders how they should do it. They will know the principles that they need to respect, but I don't want to go into details saying what exactly they should do to meet this objective. And that's where we are, and where we are trying to find the right balance. Again, there are different views among other colleagues. For instance, I don't understand why I should be informed if, for instance, the spam is removed. I don't think it makes any sense for me as a user, nor for the platform. But that's what is in at the moment. So I'm trying to fix these issues to find really the right balance between what is actually needed from the legal perspective, and leave the space for then the platforms, for businesses to figure out the best way how to achieve the objectives.
Thank you. You mentioned the e-commerce directive. Let's hope the DSA will be so well balanced that it will stay with us for another 20 years. And my next question is, how are policymakers ensuring that the DSA does not impede the innovation and ensure we do not fail?
Well, that's a good question, and that's what I am trying to achieve. As I said, DSA should be really a foundation of principles, and the other pieces of legislation will just follow. It's a big file. It addresses a number of issues: illegal content, harmful content, e-commerce, and it will have an impact on many European businesses. So I really hope that the final agreement, the final result, will, on one hand, make sure that the internet is a safer place, that we protect consumers, but at the same time that we still foster innovation in Europe. And that's what I keep repeating during these negotiations.
Thank you. Do you think there was enough attention has been paid to how we will properly implement the DSA? And also, what do you think can be done to ensure this?
I know the position of the Czech Confederation in this regard, and I think you should still be visible on this issue. While I'll do understand your position and I share it. I think there are a lot of my colleagues that need to further understand the reasons behind your position. There are hundreds, thousands of digital businesses in Europe that will be impacted by the DSA. It's not just the big tech, it's also small and medium-sized companies. It's the whole digital ecosystem. So we need really to also rely on the advices of stakeholders like yourself to understand what is then feasible in this digital ecosystem and what is not feasible. So I'm sorry that I can't say more because also a lot of negotiations are happening as we speak. I just hope that, and I will repeat what I said, that we find the right balance between the consumer protection side, which is very vocal in the European Parliament, and also the business perspective on this issue.
Thank you. Well, we plan to be even more visible than we were before, especially during this year and during the Czech presidency. You mentioned that there will be a lot of impacts on the SMEs, and this is something which we can see every day, that not many of the SMEs are paying enough attention to the preparatory regulation at the first steps of the regulation when it's being discussed. And it's very hard to persuade them to pay enough attention. And there's a confederation, and we're trying to make the work for them and give them the positions and the arguments. But this is something I think all the confederations and associations all across the Europe are struggling with a bit. We have seen a number of, let's say, more creative ideas in DSA throughout the negotiations. We appreciate that many of them didn't make it to the final proposals, but are there any issues that are still at the table that you find problematic because they could have negative consequences for European innovation? And you've mentioned it before a bit, but is there something specific?
I think it's the complexity of the requirements that we will put on all players in the digital field. So, like the liability requirements, the know your business customer, those issues. If we really follow the logic that it should go for all online players, then I think it would be really a nightmare for a lot of smaller players to really get verified before being able to be listed on a map or to post a comment. So that's something where I see the real challenge that we need to address further.
Thank you. Let's move to the data protection, which is a key issue across Europe. Do you think that the current proposal from the European Parliament on protecting businesses and the user data is workable, or can this proposal coexist with existing EU legislation like the GDPR and the e-evidence package?
I'm a firm supporter of aligning this legislation with GDPR and other legislation, as you mentioned, because the last thing we want to create is some legal uncertainty or potential clash between different pieces of legislation. So there are DSA provisions where the Parliament went further than the Council in this regard. This is the case especially when it comes to reporting data to law enforcement. And here I think we need again to find the right balance between platforms collaborating with law enforcement and protecting user privacy. Again, that's the topic for the trilogue, for the political discussion, and let's see where the majority will be at the end.
Could the user redress proposals lead to users and platforms being overwhelmed with the notifications? We all see cookie notifications when we are online. Could this be worse, and could it make content moderation unworkable and prone to abuse?
That's exactly the questions that we are asking ourselves. For me, the DSA should be really about how to empower users on one hand, but also we have to do it in a meaningful way. So for me, it's also to remember what these notifications and user redress rights are really about. So they are about protecting free speech, making sure that platforms don't take down content without notifying the users, but at the same time that the user will have a right to get the content back. If the platform was not correct in the judgment of the content, so it has to be proportionate and workable. At the same time, what we need to also avoid is that we are not flooded with notifications as users every time that the recommender system doesn't promote their piece of content. So the biggest question here will be also the enforcement, the digital service coordinator that will implement the law. So how far they will go, how the system will work in practice. There are also concerns when it comes to the out-of-court mechanism and how the internal complaint handling system will actually work. I understand the concerns of many businesses saying that it can be really a nightmare for them, and perhaps it will then the end result will be that it will lead to more removals just to be on the safe side, and also it could lead to the situation that the bigger players will have more tools how to deal with these complaints. So we have to really find a good balance, and that's the key discussion we are having. I also heard, and it's relevant also in the current situation, the impact of disinformation, how to deal with disinformation, how much the platforms should share the information, how they fight the disinformation. So there are a lot of issues that are still open for discussion.
Thank you. Last two questions. What do you think the impact of the DSA provisions will be for online marketplaces? We know some SMEs are worried about their ability to use these services. What would you say to reassure them?
Parliament has been the voice for SMEs' concerns. That's why you see it. That's what you see actually in the text of the Parliament, where there are exceptions for SMEs. Nevertheless, it's not the position that is broadly shared, and I know that the rapporteur herself is not very convinced about the exceptions for SMEs. I'm concerned about the heavy reporting that it would be very hard for a number of SMEs. And my argument is very simple. The reasons why SMEs use marketplaces is precisely because they don't have enough capacity to maintain their own online shops. So if we put further burden on them, I don't think that should be the objective of this legislation. So yes, the exceptions for SMEs, how to avoid further burden for them, it's something which is still open for the discussion. And here again, I would advise you to be really vocal on these issues in Brussels, especially with those colleagues that are still not very convinced.
Thank you for the advice. You're also a rapporteur for the General Product Safety Regulation, the so-called GPSR, which is also significant for online marketplaces. Can you speak a bit about the relationship between this regulation and the DSA? How can you ensure that they complement each other?
Yes, the Digital Services Act is a horizontal piece of legislation, and the General Product Safety basically follow on the key principles of DSA, so they need to be aligned, and we will go further with the product safety in our GPSR legislation. Both legislation, they seek the same goal. I think they need to be proportionate, aligned with the core principle of the digital single market, including the prohibition of general monitoring, which is something that is very keen for me in these negotiations. For the moment, I have registered a lot of amendments and proposals from the consumer side. So I would again encourage your members to look at this proposal from the business point of view and make sure that your ideas, your concerns are put on the table, because as I said, for the moment there is a lot of consumers' perspective in these discussions, a lot of consumers' perspective, which is good, which is why we are doing it. But at the same time, it should be something which again is workable for businesses, and where there will be actually added value for the consumers. So sometimes I doubt that some of the proposals that I receive will have actually added value for the consumers.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it has to be balanced also. Madam Vice President, thank you very much. We almost made it to 30 minutes. Thank you very much for being a guest of our first online quick discussion from the Award on Digital Topics series. Thank you for your insight and also for your work in the European Parliament. And on behalf of my team and also the Confederation of Industry, I look forward to working with you again, and I wish you continued success in your role as a Vice President.
Thank you very much. Always pleasure working with you, and thank you for this initiative. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.